Like to do. I'd like to move to the next thing. The next thing I want to say is the most familiar, unfamiliar territory. It says, beware, challenging, life-shifting terrain ahead, caution, unbalanced. Watch your step. So where are we going? Where are we going this morning? What's today's subject?
Hiking.
Hiking? We're going to talk about hiking. We're not talking about hiking. We are talking about taking a hike. We're talking about going into some uncharted territory, but yet it's familiar, and I know it's familiar to this organization because I know Stephen has said an awful lot about this subject. So what is the subject?
Goals.
Okay, it's goals. It's goals. Goal setting and achieving, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to start off with on your clipboard, you have two sheets of paper, two full sheets of paper that say dream list. Let me explain a couple of things before I ask you to get going into the first real activity for today. Those dream lists, this is a whole different approach to this. Here's what I know. I know as an organization we've covered this subject matter. I know we've done an awful lot on goal setting and achieving. I know at the end of the year Stephen has us do all kinds of projects. But I also know this. He's also only done that on the sales management side. So I know that for some people this will be your first take from our organization on this, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get together and do this. Secondly, we're looking at the time of year. Steve and I are looking, we're like, hey, it's midpoint in the year. This is actually a good time to surprise them with this subject matter and really take a look at where you are in light of where you wanted to be going this year. So we wanted to do that as well. But I want you to also think about how we've approached this in the previous year. We've taken on this subject, and here's what we've done. We've told you an awful lot about goals, how to go about it, and then we send you out. We've given you information on it, stories, little tidbits, little pointers and tips. But what I started doing last year, and what we've tried to do this year, by the way, in our management sessions, is do more hands-on activities. More hands-on activities, getting you involved at some point in here where you're interacting, you're doing something, so that you're more likely to take something from it, and you're not just sitting into a 2-hour session and I'm just up here talking. Okay, we didn't want to do it that way. So today, we're going a different approach. I've never done this way with the management staff, and so hopefully you'll see the value of what we're going to do. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to list as many goals and dreams as you possibly can. And I'm going to give you the parameters for that in just a moment. But the reason why you have two sheets is we want you to get past 20. There's 20 on a page, we want you to get past that. We had someone in a session, even though we gave 12 minutes, they got onto a third sheet. And so I just want to encourage you to just write in just a few moments. We're going to give you about 12 minutes to do that. But before I do that, because we've covered this subject and because some of you may not be all that excited about the subject matter, what I want to do is just hit a couple of very quick stories to hopefully get you excited about what we're about to do with today's session, because today is a work session. You're going to, after we get through the bulk of, or the main portion of it, I've got 5 stations set up, and at each of those stations you're going to really do some things that are hopefully going to move you closer and closer to your goals and dreams. The first story I want to tell you is in December of 2012, I decided I had a new hire class, and on the second day of new hire class with salespeople, I either set aside half a day or an entire day, and this is the only subject we discuss. It's goal setting and achieving, and we just go into a lot of details. We try to provide a lot of examples and a lot of motivation for it. And at the end of that particular session, at the end of the day, a guy comes up to me. He's a salesperson here, and he says, Ed, okay, I totally buy into it. This is the first time I'm really, truly interested in it, and I've heard it many times before. Hence the title, Familiar but Unfamiliar Territory. We've all been told of the importance of goals and dreams. He said, I really want to do it, but he says, I can tell you what's been my problem in the past. I work a lot of hours, and when I get off of work, I want to recreate. I have some things that I like to do. I like gaming. I have shows that I like. I have things that I'd rather do that are more relaxing than to keep going and to try to pursue my goals and dreams. But I'm convinced that this is what I need to do. Well, we talked about a couple of the steps in goal setting, and I said, listen, when you're done weighing the cost versus when you're done weighing the cost and figuring out what it costs versus what the benefits of it are, I think you're going to have some buy-in. Because he started talking about some other things, his family. Oh, I moved it back here.
Oh, okay. I was confused. Sorry.
he started talking about some of the things he wanted to do with his family. Here's a salesperson. He says, man, he says, I know I'm not spending enough time with my son. He says, I know I'm not spending enough time with my wife when I get off of work. And then he said this, and he said, for the first time in my life, he said, about 2 weeks ago, my son comes to me and he starts asking me questions of a spiritual nature, and he says, and I don't have a clue on how to answer it. So he says, man, there's some stuff I need to be able to do in my life, but I can't see myself with my time being able to do that. Fast forward about 2-3 weeks. This guy is coming up to me, he's going, that list that we started with, I started crossing stuff off of that list. I have more exciting things going on in my life right now than I've ever had. This just turns out that last year, 2013, even though this guy has been in the business for 10 years, this turned out to be his best year ever. Now listen, you may not chalk that all up to goal setting and achieving, and I don't either. We made some moves in the company that I think paid off well. We moved some people in different positions that I think made it possible for him to do that. There's a lot of really good things that are going on, but he said the thing that catalyzed it for him was getting a list of things that he wanted to go after and seeing how important they were in light of what he was doing with his time previously. And he said, listen, he says, I'm on pace for more income than I've ever had in my life. He says, you wouldn't believe what I have. I have designated time set aside for my family, things that I'm doing that I wasn't doing before. My family sees me in a different light. All of these things that he just started listing, he said, and it all started in a class in December where they asked me, where you asked me to write down a list. So I got really excited about that. And then I found something out. I realized that a lot of our salespeople, because I hadn't been doing we hadn't had any formal training, hadn't seen our take on goal setting. So it's about this time last year that I decided to take this on with our salespeople. We're talking to our salespeople, and I'm getting them to go through these activities. Very similar to what we're doing today. Today will be more detailed when you get to your stations. But as we're doing it, I'm like, man, I got guys like this guy who's downstairs. The guy's named Sean O'Connor. I said, Sean, I feel bad about this. I'm going to be covering the same subject I just covered 6 months ago, but I mean, just come on in the class. I think it might be a good refresher for you. And he said, okay. So he comes in the class and he's getting ready to leave, and he says, Ed, he says, I actually think that's exactly what I needed. He said, I don't know if you know this, but I crossed 13 of 17 things off of my goals list. I've already crossed 13 to 17 things off. And he said, and my numbers started to dip and things started to stagnate. And he said, Ed, I think the thing I needed was to get a new list. To get that excitement back up, to get my energy back up. And he said, I think this is what's going to do it and put me back on pace. Finished with a record year across the board, and he could tell you a bunch of categories. I wish I had the time to have him tell you all of the things that happened as a result of starting with that sheet of paper that's sitting before you. That's the first one. I want to tell you another story. December of this past year, had a sales training session in Lima, and before I was getting ready to start, I don't take phone calls or look at text during the training session, but for this particular one, I had a matter going on. I said, listen, I got to keep my eye on the phone. I said, if something happens, I may need to take a break for a couple minutes. If we do that, here's what we're going to do in the session. Well, I looked at my phone. I said, hey, this could be that call. Here's what I want to do. Since it's December of this year, I want somebody to come up and just talk about goals, what they're doing, what they're not doing, how's it going, anybody. Let me have a salesperson talk for a couple minutes while I check this. Silent for about 5 seconds, and finally a guy in the room, his name's Leon, says, I'll talk. I'll talk. Imagine Leon saying, I'll talk. So Leon comes up, and he starts to talk, and I look at my phone, I realize it's not what I thought it was. So now I'm tuned in as well. And he says, Ed made me, in April of this year, he made me write out a bunch of goals. He said, write down the pipe dreams, write down the ridiculous stuff, write down the stuff that might take years to get, write down the easy stuff, all of that. He said, so I went ahead and made a big list. He convinced me to do it. And he said, when we got out of that new hire class, he says, you know what I decided to do? He said, you got to keep the goals visible. So I went home and I put it on my refrigerator. And he said, after a couple of weeks, I was looking at my refrigerator and I started to laugh. I said, look at this. I knew this was just a bunch of garbage. Another dude up there talking a bunch of motivational stuff that's not going to ever do anything for you. A month later, he walks by and looks at it and he's like, man, this is a joke. He's now forgotten. You know how after a while you have something on your refrigerator, you don't even see it anymore. He's not even looking at the list. He doesn't see it. Until one day, about 3 months into it, he looks at the list and he goes, hey, I just did that. I just did that. And so he goes to cross it off of the list. He crosses it off of the list and he says, man, that actually felt pretty good. I wasn't even concentrating on the list and I crossed something off. The truth of the matter is this: when you write it down, your subconscious mind starts to go to work on it. You're going to increase the likelihood that you're going to get it just by doing the activities we're going to do today. And so he crosses it off and he looks at the list. He says, you know what? I kind of like that feeling. What else could I cross off of the list? So he takes a look at the list and he says, you know what? I bet I could do that real quick. And so he sets out to do that, and within a couple of days he's crossing that off of the list. And now he's on a regular pattern where he's looking at things to cross off of the list. Then he starts telling me all of the stuff that he started doing. Man, I got back in church, I joined the choir, I did this, my wife and I are doing this. He listed off about 6 or 7 things for the group, and I totally wasn't expecting it. And I thought, my goodness, look at the power of this list. There is something about this. And the last thing I want to share with you before I get you to go into this activity, I'm just going to read a quick excerpt. I was doing a new hire class in 2000, I want to say 2008 or 9. And it's a 2 or 3 week class. And about the end of that class, I get a letter, not from the salesperson, but from the salesperson's wife. And I just want you to think about what she says in one of these sentences. And I may or may not have read this before, but just think about this in light of our content for today. It says this, it says, Ed, I'd like to thank you for giving my husband, Chris, the opportunity of a lifetime. He's come home each night with such a positive attitude and willingness to apply what he has been taught. I personally like writing down and committing to goals. Now listen to her observation. She says, a lot has gotten done around here in the past couple of weeks. He is very excited to grow with Kia. He really looks up to you. She's observing and saying there's a lot of stuff that has gotten done around the house that's just been sitting for months and months and months on end. But you know what happened? The guy got a list going. And it's like when you got something important to do, you're one day off and you're trying to figure out everything you're going to do and you get out a list, you're that much more likely to cross it off. Let's just simplify it as that. That's what this dream list is. It's just this is a life to-do list for you. And that's the power of it. And so congratulations to you on what you just did. I don't know if you realize this, but you just shifted out of the majority into the minority that gives you the majority of success. Okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next couple of minutes here. But I first want you to look at the categories I have listed up. I have a number of categories there for goals, and I just want you to see, did we cover all of the bases? Through a few classes, I had a list that was a little shorter, but I've added a few here because people said, hey, you got to put this category up. I've got categories like spiritual, family, health and fitness, financial, educational goals, home improvement, occupational or your work goals, creative exploratory goals, recreational. I'd also consider vacation to fit there, social, interactive, giving or outreach goals, relationship goals, personal or miscellaneous, happiness, and I call it reach for the stars. At one point somebody said the unobtainable. It's the seemingly unattainable, but it's the reach for the stars goals. Is there a category that we need to add? Just study that. Did we miss any categories? Oh my.
Trick question.
Yeah. No, it isn't. It's not a trick question. I'm just making sure you can't think of a subject or category that I've missed.
Well, miscellaneous probably covers a lot of it.
Good point. Case in point. Moving on. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick. Note to self, don't do this activity again. Thank you, Nick. Thanks for making me feel good there, Nick. Got a message for you, didn't All right. If there is another category you'd like to create, you have the room to do that, but you're going to want to hang on to this half sheet of paper. That will play into it. I said congratulations to you because most people never get this far. I believe everybody has goals and dreams. Kurt made mention of some people not writing down any aspirations. They have aspirations. They have something they want to accomplish out of life. and they may not want to commit it to paper. There's something about doing this. As a matter of fact, one of the conclusive thoughts from Monday's session, somebody raised their hand and said, you know what? It's a little different when you put it down on paper. It requires a little more of you. It's a little scary to do that. And so that's what I mean by going into that unfamiliar territory. But you've made a move that most people will not make. I've been in previous sessions and tried to convince people of the importance of writing down their goals. And I've had a guy say, listen, do you know all of the things I've already accomplished in my life without writing down? Man, I got it right here. And they start listing off this stuff. My question is, how much faster would you have gotten it? How much more could you have crossed off? I don't believe it's a bad thing to add a list to it, even if you're already successful at what you're doing. I'm looking at the book, The Power of Focus. I just want to read an excerpt about a guy they call the real Indiana Jones. John Goddard, the famous explorer and adventurer the man Reader's Digest calls the real Indiana Jones, is a wonderful role model for this concept of writing down goals. At the tender age of 15, he wrote down and made a list, or he sat down and made a list of 127 challenging lifetime goals he wanted to accomplish. Here are a few of them. Explore 8 of the world's major rivers, including the Nile, the Amazon, the Congo. Climb 16 of the highest mountains, including Mount Everest, Mount Kenyon, and the Matterhorn. Learn to fly a plane. Circumnavigate the globe. He's done this 4 times. Visit the North and South Poles. Read the Bible from cover to cover. Play the flute and violin. Study primitive cultures in 12 countries, including Borneo, the Sudan, and Brazil. By the time he had turned 50, he had successfully completed more than 100 of the goals on his list. When asked what caused him to create this fascinating list in the first place, he replied 2 reasons. First, I was fed up with adults telling me what to do and what not to do with my life. Second, I didn't want to be 50 years old and realize I hadn't really accomplished anything. Now, you may not want to challenge yourself the way that John Goddard has done, but don't settle for mediocrity. Think big. Create goals that get you so excited you can hardly sleep at night. Life has a lot more to offer. Why shouldn't you enjoy your fair share? Now, some of you might look at that as discouraging. Man, I didn't want to be 50 years old and not accomplish anything. Listen, this was meant to be an encouragement to you. From this point on, what do you want to put on the list that you can accomplish? Here's why we pre-framed everything the way we did. We said, listen, what was the time you had the most energy in your life? And what was your deepest regret? I believe this subject matter can help gain back some energy, and I think it can eliminate some future regret. I'm going through on a personal level with my parents. The economy taking a dip has cost them some stuff, and some things have happened financially that they were not anticipating. And my dad is looking back on his life, and I'm seeing my dad for the first time pretty much in a depressed state. And as I look at him, and as he keeps reflecting on things, one of the things he wanted to do, he started with Dana Corporation, worked for him for almost 40 years. He worked himself into a very nice position in a corporate setting. He was in charge of government relations for a Fortune 500 company. That's a great position. And he served in the last 15, 20 years of his term there. But here's what he always wanted to do. He always wanted to own his own car washes. He wanted about 7 or 8. He had locations in towns. When he moved to different towns, he was looking at locations of where he wanted to set them up. That was his thing. He wanted to be the best car wash in the area. And he tried a couple of times. He tried to ask his dad to help him out, to get him started, and to do some things. But I can tell you this. It is the source of deep regret. And we're going to have an activity at one of these stations in just a few moments where you're going to have the opportunity to rank, to prioritize your goals by determining, hey, later on in my life, if I lost this list and found it again, would it be the source of deep regret if I looked at this goal and said, oh my goodness, I didn't do anything with this? That's the power of today's session. I think some people, just like Sean O'Connor, are going to get more energy. They're going to have a lot more energy about things because they've got a list, a to-do list, a life to-do list to go after. And so hopefully you're excited about what we're doing, and hopefully you can see that how this list should be an encouragement to you. I gave you guys a folder, or a blue folder, and if you will open that up, I want you to take a look at that. The first page should be a page with 100 different faces on it. 100 different faces. Now, I've done this activity in the past, and it was confusing, so I've changed the format of this. This is the first time I've presented this sheet this way. You'll notice underneath it, it says the specific faces are irrelevant, because I get people studying the faces going, hey, I see Clinton, I see this guy, I see that guy. And they want to cross off particular faces. But that's not the point of this. My point of this next exercise is to just get you to think about percentages. So here's what I'd like you to do as you're studying the faces.
I think there's 100 there.
As you're studying the faces, here's what I'd like you to do. We're going to break this list into basically 3 categories. The first category we're going to do this way. You might just put a slash through the number of faces. Again, through the number of faces. You don't have to look at the particular faces. The number of faces that you believe kind of follow the rules for goal setting. Okay? That means they follow them sometimes, but not all the time. They're in and they're out. They want to do well with goals, but they don't follow them as much as they should. That gives maybe, let's say we just put a slash through that many faces. And out of 100 faces, how many of them kind of understand goal setting and achieving? And then maybe put an X through the number of faces that really, truly understand and live and breathe goal setting and achieving. And then you know what that'll leave you? The faces that are left are the faces that really don't do anything with their goals at all. Okay? Hopefully I clarified. Do I need to clarify that? One slash through the number of faces that kind of have this goal setting thing. They do it sometimes, they're in, they're out. Maybe they don't always follow all of the rules to it. One slash through the number of faces out of 100 that kind of have this figured out. Then put an X through the number of faces, put X's on the number of faces that really, truly understand and live and breathe goal setting and achieving. And then that's just going to leave you a group of the population that just don't do anything with it. So you're only making 2 kinds of marks. A slash for those that kind of, and an X for those that are true goal setters and achievers. Take maybe 1 minute to do it. Is that,
Doesn't matter.
I keep saying the faces are irrelevant.
No. You're not picking numbers. Guessing the
The faces don't matter whether they're smiling or front. We're just talking about the number of faces.
What about the same face on there twice? It could be 100
What's the
blank boxes.
percentage?
Yeah.
What percentage are goal setters?
Next exercise, just
your
use
best
blocks.
guess.
No faces. Too confusing with the faces.
I'm just thinking. This is another one that is gone. This will be the last time people will see the faces.
I got it.
I'm done. I'm finished.
And it's not your fault. It's not your fault, it's mine. I just wanted to materialize the numbers to make them look. It doesn't matter if they're smiling or humping.
Next time just have
Stick men, that will work. Yeah. Stick figures will work.
blank boxes.
Blank boxes. That's happy.
Icons.
Why did George Bush look so mad?
The rest don't.
I doubt it. but I will check.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rescue myself from this activity. I'm going to just ask the question, what did you put down? What did you put down? How many did you say kind of have it figured out, Nick?
Kind of have it figured out. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21.
21 kind of have it figured out, and how many really have it figured out?
3.
3. So it leaves almost 70, a little more than 75% of the population don't do anything with their goals, according to Nick's guess. Somebody else's guess.
Mine was 10% and 3%.
10% and 3%. Okay? 10% kind of have it figured out, 3% are true goal setters and achievers.
Yeah.
All right. Okay? I'm getting a nod from a couple of other people that those numbers seem pretty good.
25 and 15.
25 and 15. 25 kind of, 15 are true goal setters and achievers. All right, will you turn to the next page? Turn to the next page. We're actually going to put the statistics down here. We're going to put the statistics down. And a few of you, I can already tell, will remember going through these. At some point you have gone through these statistics, but not everyone has. In the 1950s, Harvard University did a study of graduating seniors. graduating seniors from an Ivy League school. Pretty ambitious students? Yeah, I'd say ambitious students. But that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot about the rest of the picture. But here's what they did. They took the graduating seniors and they surveyed them and they said, okay, how many of them have goals? What are their goals? All of this stuff. Then they took them 20 years later, same group, and they calculated the following results. They wanted to determine how many had no goals at all. What percentage of the graduating class in the 1950s of Harvard University had no goals? That's saying they didn't have any formal way of really going about it. Everybody's got goals and dreams up here, but what percentage of them really didn't have anything going with goals?
87. 89.
What's that?
80%.
Yep. Yep. Some of you are very familiar with this. If you said 87, you've heard this, you've heard these facts. 87% is absolutely correct. Now think about that for just a moment. 87% of them had no goals, nothing. Nothing that was formalized, just something in their head. All right? The group that kind of, sort of had goals going.
10.
Okay? That was 10%. D for real was right. Or was that Woodsy that was right and you got the answers?
Watch out, Ed.
I cheated off the D-Rock.
That's right. Just like high school.
Now, since I don't know where you graduated, I'm going to fill in the rest of the blanks. Okay? That would leave us with 3%. 3% are true goal setters and achievers. 3%. I want to tell you why I'm sharing these statistics with you. I had heard a lot about goal setting. I've had several people talk to me about it. But it wasn't until someone presented this that it got me excited about it. My first steps into goal setting and achieving were done as a result of seeing these statistics. These are the ones that really set me on a whole new course, a whole new path. 87% had no goals at all. The 10% kind of had it figured out. They did it, but not as consistently as they should. 3% of the population, at least from this graduating class, were true goal setters and achievers. Okay? What does that mean? What does that mean? From this point on, we're going to call them 3%ers because they're rare. They're rare. 3%ers. It's talking about income-wise. How much more do they earn than a non-goal setter? How many more times do they earn?
97 times
97 times?
50.
2,
Hmm?
10 times.
10 times?
2,
10 times is right. I want you to think about this for a moment. Could you see that number, Nick?
Surveys the goals down.
10 times. They have surveyed the true 3%ers and determined that they earn 10 times as much as a non-goal setter. The last part of this is the part that just kind of blew me away. These 3%ers, and now we're not just talking about material possessions, we're talking about what they had achieved, what they had accomplished, the places they had been that they could cross off of the list. The 3%ers, they had more than the other 97% combined when they did this survey. The 3% had achieved more, had accomplished more than the other 97% combined. That got my attention. That blew me away. I said, what do I have to do to become a 3%er? What are the steps to being a true goal setter and achiever? And listen, I want to be honest with you. I've been doing this goal setting thing for a number of years now. I can look back through my documents and through stuff that I have where I was keeping goals. I know I have sheets at least dating back to 2006 and maybe before then. But here's the truth of the matter. It is very difficult to stay on this course with everything that's going on in life. I put myself, even though I teach this stuff, love this stuff, and I can tell you a number of things I have been able to do as a result of this, I would still put myself somewhere in that 10%. Not as consistent as I could be or should be. It takes something to get to a constant 3%er living and carrying out your goals and dreams across the board. And yet I can tell you I've had some things that have happened that you couldn't explain any other way. Couldn't explain any other way. And so that's the power of this. And so I just want you to think about those statistics for just a moment. And what we're going to do, and I'll ask for some comments from you. These questions are asking for comments from you, as a matter of fact. What were some observations you make if you look at your dreams list right now as we're concluding? Did you make some observations about yourself? Maybe you see a pattern like, hey, most of my goals are family goals right now. Or, hey, right now I'm a little behind schedule, so a lot of them are financial goals or whatever. What observations did you make personally about yourself? First of all, give me a nay or a yay if you made some observations as you look at your list.
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of observations did you make? One or two people?
A lot of goals I've started but not carried on with and continued on with.
Okay, that's a good thing to realize. Hey, I've started these, I've already got something going, I just need to finish these. Nick?
They all tie into one another.
They all tie into one another in some form or fashion. Very
One
good.
done, another one, it's like domino effect, essentially.
And you know what? It can have that domino effect, just like the guy I told you about at the beginning who said, man, it felt good to cross one off. What else can I cross off? And to get that momentum going. Any other observations on your own?
A lot of short term.
Hmm?
A lot of short term.
A lot of short-term goals for you. And it may not be the case for other people. So it's what observations did you make about yourself?
Some
That-
goals, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's your class.
Nope.
He said go ahead and it's his class, so.
I found that some of the goals that I have are ongoing goals. They aren't really one that's going to ever be completed. It's just something that's a work in progress.
Oh.
Interesting. Very interesting observation. Yep, deep.
Everything costs money.
Yes, a lot of it does. A lot of it does. Let me ask you this question. Which station was most meaningful to you? This station over
She
here?
likes markers.
She likes markers, that's
Oh,
right.
put things in perspective.
This really does put things in perspective because you think about everything you did. You categorized it, you prioritized it, and you time factorized it to figure it out. That you can gain an awful lot in 8 minutes from this session, and if you didn't have a chance to complete it, this is the one I would say, man, you really need to complete.
It's just a thought, not kind of off subject.
Sure.
If everybody look at their list right now, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you have anything else on your list?
Wow. That's a great question. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would that solve many of the things on your list?
Yeah. Would you have anything else on your list?
A few, nothing else.
Man, you got
A few.
Are you spiritual?
maybe some
You got
spiritual
family?
goals, some health and fitness goals would still be there. So yeah, that's a great question. That's a great way of looking at it. Matter of fact, that may be a question I carry forward in some upcoming goal setting classes to kind of put it in perspective. Well put. Well put. And my final question is, were there other stations that you liked? Is this the station you liked that felt like you took the most from? And this is for me for upcoming activities. So
I think the highlighting one, yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of put
Okay.
stuff in perspective.
It's kind of like the highlight table for me.
yes.
I kind of like the journal table.
You like the journal table? There were only a couple of tables that were really, or a few people that were the whole time through just on the journal one. But that one has a lot of power too. That has a lot of power to write about what you're thinking about and to put it down on paper. Okay? My last question for you is, what is your takeaway? I always do that. Reflective thing. Reflection is learning. So what did you take away from today's session overall? I'm not looking for what you thought of today's session. I'm asking either what did you take away, or maybe it's another question like Derek posed. Marty.
You know, a lot of the stuff I've read over and over, and we've been training on since 2008.
Yep.
Even going down to the Paul Cummings seminars for 3 days was this on
On
steroids, just
steroids.
going nuts. But the good thing is you know, when you get stagnant with it, this kind of sharpens the act, or sharpens your axe, gets you back into the flow, and then can just provide a little bit more clarity on what you're doing wrong and what decisions you're making wrong, and what you should change to, what actions you should implement and change you should implement, so that way you can start actually achieving these goals.
It's a good checkpoint. I mean, it's just a good time to kind of put everything in check and look and see where you're going and like, hey, I do need to refresh on this. So hopefully, those of you that have felt like we've done this an awful lot over the years, hopefully you didn't feel like this is overkill. Hopefully you saw a different perspective and hopefully the hands-on approach. I know in the past you left with ideas about doing it, but today you're leaving with some momentum on your goals and dreams. Maybe two more comments, and I want to say want to give a closing recommendation.
It reinvigorates, you do get to look at it and kind of get excited again.
You do get reinvigorated. Hopefully, this is the thing that gives you back some of that energy. I don't know if I can take you back to the energy when you had the absolute most energy in your life, but this can certainly boost it.
Well, what I was just going to say is I've done the goal thing a few times, and it's just nice to have this refresher because, like you said, I mean, even if you've done this a million times and whatever, it's really easy to get away from it. So having something like this, even if you've done it a few times, it's really nice to just you know, go back and maybe 6 months from now, you know, look at all this information and see what you have done and what you haven't done, and, you know, what's important and not important.
Absolutely. This is a good chance to refresh.
It was kind of like my self-core values.
Ooh, right. That's another way of looking at it. That really is. It's funny you say that. This is the sheet we passed out to high school seniors that were up for the car giveaway. It's got on one side our core values. On the other side, it has the 8 steps to goal setting. So quite appropriate timing. There are the 8 steps to goal setting. And one of the last things it tells you to do is to make sure you take some kind of action on these. You've got to take action now on these goals and dreams. Hopefully we took time aside that you would not have taken. You would not have had this kind of time to devote to this. So hopefully that's the beauty of this. Now here's what you need to do. You obviously aren't finished with this. You've got to keep going with this. I'm going to send a follow-up email that's going to have a recommendation to you, just an encouragement to keep going with these goals and dreams. The last thing I want to share with you is the 48-hour rule. Allow me to share the 48-hour rule. This book was given to me by a salesperson a couple of years ago, or early last year. Good Life Rules. And one thing in here that really stood out to me is he said the 48-hour rule. You ever seen the show 48 Hours?
Yeah.
What are they trying to determine within 48 hours?
Who did it?
Who did it? Trying to figure out or solve the crime. And what happens if you don't solve the crime in 48 hours?
The percentage is almost to the fact.
It goes cold. The percentages or the likelihood that you're going to determine it drop dramatically. The exact same thing is true with what we did today. If you don't act on it within 48 hours or get something going, you're going to decrease the likelihood that you're ever going to get going with this and really get some momentum going with it. It is a sound piece of advice, and so I'll follow up with an email just encouraging you to go ahead and to take some action on this thing right away. Yes, sir.
Do it, Ed. Do it.
Do what?
The sing-along thing to it.
Do the
Do you see? Come on.
Do the goal
Remember?
setting. We're
Remember?
out of time to do it. No, if you guys say to do it, we'll do it.
No,
It'll
I want you to do
It'll
it.
take.
There's a
If
song?
you have to participate, it'll take 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, we're ready.
Oh, now I'm gonna be an asshole. I don't.
See, it's up to you. You're calling it. You
Yeah,
guys
that-
call it
that-
out. Do you want to take 2 or 3 minutes past the time? If you do, I got a way to reinforce the goal setting.
Yeah, sure.
Just do it.
Everybody stand up. Put your things down, and then when we're done with this, you're done. It's I say, you say. I say it, you say it back to me. It's not just I say, you say. It's the way I say it, you say it.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, and it's also I do, you do. So if I do something crazy, you do something, the exact same thing crazy. So we're going to do this back and forth to one another. I'll do it. You guys do it in unison the same way I do it. If my voice goes high, your voice goes high. Okay? So whatever we do, we got to use your... Stop.
Haley's doing it already.
All right. So here it goes. You got to repeat after me and do after me. You got to see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
You gotta see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
You got to see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
You gotta see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
You got to see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
You gotta see the goal in your mind's eye as if it's already real.
Starting date and completion date.
Starting date and completion date.
I said starting date and completion date.
I said starting date and completion date.
Starting date and completion date.
Starting date and completion date.
Write it down as an I will statement.
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 Resolve yourself to pay the price.
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 You got to see the obstacles in advance.
You gotta see the obstacles in advance.
You got to list all them benefits.
You gotta list all them
Come on,
benefits.
Stevie Wonder style. You got to list all them benefits.
You gotta list all them benefits.
And have a well-designed action plan.
Well-designed action plan.
Have a well-designed action plan.
Well-designed action plan.
Take massive action now.
Take massive action
I
now.
said take massive action now.
Take massive action
I'm
now.
going to do one more and put it all in it. Take massive action now. Do it.
Take massive action now.
Everybody have a great one.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.